Want to build your career with CMI confidence? It all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders with its on-demand resources, network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, an introduction to AI for consultants and leaders. I'm Matt Roberts. I'm the Director for Chartered Management Consultant at the CMI and also have responsibility for the Institute of Consulting. Thanks for those of you that are joining us live, and if you're watching back, either way, I hope that you really enjoy today's content. I'm delighted today to be joined by a guest speaker, Rob Shilston from Blenheim Chalcot. Rob is Blenheim Chalcot's Chief Technology Officer, and Blenheim Chalcot are the UK's leading digital agency, helping to build new ventures in the digital space. Rob, very many thanks for giving us your time today. Delighted that you can join us, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to your presentation shortly. I wondered if you wanted to say a few words of introduction both to yourself and to Blenheim Chalcot.
Sure, thanks. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here today. Personally, I trained as an engineer. I've been working in many different startups over the years, and joined Blenheim Chalcot about 5 years ago. Blenheim Chalcot is the leading venture builder. Our business is building businesses, and it's so important for us to remain on top of best practice and emerging technologies. So for us, the arrival in sort of early 2022 of generative AI, watching it mature, and then how we wanted to capitalize on it was super important. So it's been an amazing journey of transformation and adoption and learning, and be delighted to share that with everyone on this webinar today.
Fantastic, thanks Rob. And I have to admit to everybody that I've had the pleasure of seeing Rob present around the subject of generative AI a couple of times, so I'm really excited for you guys in the audience to take advantage of Rob's expertise today. Before I hand over to Rob to get on with the presentation, if you have got questions that you'd like to pose to Rob, once the presentation's over, we're going to give some time over to a Q&A. So please do get typing those questions into the live chat. We'll get to as many as we possibly can today. But look, without further ado, Rob, I'm going to ask you to take the reins, and we'll see you shortly.
Thanks very much, Matt. And as Matt said, please do post the questions. Everyone's on their own individual journey of learning through this topic. So this is hopefully an introduction that's going to work for everyone, but you each know your own specific part of that learning journey. So do put your comments in, and we'll tackle those individual questions. So as I just said a minute ago, Blenheim Chalcot is UK's leading venture builder. You might not have heard of Blenheim Chalcot, but you might have heard of many of the individual businesses and brands that we've grown and developed. Maybe, for example, someone like Clisk or Salary Finance. We work in many different sectors, but what we know is that if we rest on our laurels, we're going to get disrupted. Everyone's going to get disrupted. And so it's critically important to own your own disruption, to be supporting whatever business project or team you're working on and trying to think about how you can disrupt yourselves. And generative AI is one of those moments. Blenheim Chalcot's pretty unique in the way that it provides a lot of support services around the individual businesses so they can focus on what's unique about their individual problems, customer spaces, and areas they're working in. So I'm one of the central team, as Matt said, Chief Technology Officer, helping each of these businesses think about technology wisely. As you probably know, the pace of change at the moment is unbelievable. We sort of call out a few bits of information here. I think one of the most interesting for me was that ChatGPT went viral so fast, and yet as a product, it's not got any natural virality. It's not like Dropbox where you upload files and then you're encouraged to share them. ChatGPT was valuable in and of itself, and it was the sort of the spoken virality, people excited by what they saw, that caused it to spread. And the pace of change has been relentless. You can see the examples of improvements of images and photos And nowadays, the auto-generated images are absolutely unbelievable. We consider this to be one of those epochs of change, one of those revolutions that have happened. Many of us remember the advent of the web browser in the mid-90s, and this principally democratized the ability for publishing. Anyone could become a publisher. Then sort of in the early 2000s, we had smartphones starting to have actually powerful compute available with us. Over the years since then, we've all been looking for what the new technological thing might be. There's been a lot of hype around blockchain, crypto, VR, those kinds of topics, but we do genuinely believe that this generative AI is the next generational change. When we look back at it, we think the difference will be that it's the time that people started to talk to computers and communicate in their own terms. And what we hope is that this is part of the opportunity for the UK to arrest its dip in productivity growth since 2008, where we've been far, far away from the long-term average increase in productivity. When we think about what we can do with AI, and I'll come to some more specific examples in a few minutes, it's useful to think about it in this sort of framework. On the left, we've got sort of the inner circle. What is possible today that gets some benefits and becomes improved in the future? But the harder thing to think about is what's perceived of being impossible today that has become possible. We'll give a few examples, just sort of excite your brains. But that's where I really encourage everyone to break apart your own thoughts and processes. Think about what are you doing at the moment that can get better, and what are you not doing? Does anything that you're not doing become possible? As I said at the beginning, everyone's on their own individual journey, as individuals, as teams, as organizations, as business units, as enterprises. And as I'm sure all of you have had or led in your own careers, change management is important. It's impossible to short circuit these parts of change. And we think that this sort of ladder of thinking about maturity may help you delivering that sort of change management within the organizations that you're working for. If you've not engaged with Gen AI, do get started. Hopefully you can all use this on a personal basis, that DIY personal use of ChatGPT. But then the next step, step 3, is starting to think about that structured approach to the identification of opportunities. And then what follows from that is how you're building your business cases, that rollout, and then going further and further as you're getting increasingly customized and productionized workflow changes. The sorts of things that might transform might be education. It's not the only thing, but as an example, I bring this up on the screen. People might not have heard of what's called the 2 sigma problem. The 2 sigma problem is represented by the graph on the left, where if you take a group of students in a classroom, they're going to get a particular distribution of scores. If you give that same group of people some sorts of reinforcement, then they do behave better. You see that blue flat curve becomes a little bit spikier and in orange. But if you can give them direct one-to-one tutoring and coaching, then their performance of exactly the same group of students at any age becomes markedly better. And the technology is now there that we're going to be able to do this. If we can switch to the video, and we'll just watch the sort of first minute or so of this video as an example of what
him on this math problem, but don't give him the answer. You can ask questions and nudge him in the right direction, but I really want to make sure he understands it himself. And he's here in the room, so you can talk to him directly.
Of course, I'd be happy to help. Let's look at the problem together. Can you first identify which sides of the triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse relative to angle alpha?
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. That's correct. Now, looking at the triangle, which side do you think is the hypotenuse? Remember
really,
the hypotenuse?
I'm not totally sure. I think it might be this one, but I really am not sure. This side AC.
You're close, Actually, side AC is called the adjacent side to the angle alpha. The hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle.
We'll pause at that point. But why I bring up this example that was released by OpenAI last week is you can see how the ability to have vision, iteration, exploration, unstructured conversations with an AI agent is going to transform how education is working. These are really amazing times that we're living in. But one of the questions that I'm sure will come to is sort of how do we get ready for this stuff? How do we actually upskill ourselves into these topics? The way we've been delivering this, well, the way we've been thinking about training and transformation internally is to say, what are the underlying components that get released by the technologies? What are the underlying possibilities? If we jump back to the slides, we'll see that the very first thing that gets created, the very first capability that we talk about is reading and generating text. I hope everyone who's watching this webinar has done this by now, which is to go and have a conversation with ChatGPT. In this example, I said, I'd like to know what to cook for dinner. I gave it a few criteria and it came up with something that was a possibility for me. There is always the risk that things are going to be got wrong. But when I'm making a recipe suggestion, I'll know not to include nuts if I'm allergic to nuts. I'll know that if the recipe says don't cook chicken, that feels like an unwise thing to do. So we do need to think about where safety fits in. But to get started, do put things in, do try out, do have a conversation, do chat and start to see what can happen when you're putting in text, getting text back. So this is what we call reading and generating text. Generating images. It is unbelievable that in the last year, generative AI has generated as many photos as all cameras have ever done in the previous 150 years. There were a few examples already of image generation. These are also available free of charge for each of you to try out, either with ChatGPT or by going to Microsoft search engine bing.com and trying to generate an image in the search box there. Do have a play with that. Do think about what that means. What we're starting to see further is generating videos. Here, there was a prompt which says, please generate a movie trailer featuring the adventures of a 30-year-old spaceman wearing a red wool knitted motorcycle helmet, blue sky, salt desert, cinematic style, shot on a 35mm film with vivid colors. This is what is becoming possible. These videos are getting generated. They can't be done in real time yet, but this is going to utterly transform so much media generation and creation. The next topic is reading and responding to queries. But as an example here, we're also demonstrating that these models, and again, these are all available to you straight away right now by going to OpenAI's website, can understand handwriting, cursive handwriting. This is some copperplate handwriting from my wife's grandfather to his fiancée during the Second World War. It's clearly written, but it's not the way that we read nowadays. So it's much harder for us to decipher. Whereas these AI models are able to read and understand it, aggregate this data, and then I can ask questions against these letters. How is Fred's experience of the war different to the common narrative? What might be interesting about Fred's experience of the war to tell to my child? We've talked about reading and generating text, but we can also read and evaluate text against criteria. So in this example, one of the businesses I'm working with is thinking about how to use this to review policies. In this example, anti-money laundering policies. Upload the documents, assess them against criteria, and see how those work, how those documents are stacking up against individual criteria. You might be having to generate reports for auditors or for regulators. The OpenAI models and other technologies I'll talk about in a minute might be a great place to say, imagine I'm submitting this to the regulator. What are the first 5 questions they might ask? Where is my document less clear? Where might there be some internal inconsistencies in my document? Can you help me improve the drafting? And all of this can happen in any natural language, including foreign languages. And we go further than that by saying that actually computer code is just another type of foreign language. So this tool called tlddraw.com or tlddraw allows you to draw a diagram and then click the blue button in the top right, make real, which translates a picture into code. What we're seeing is these models are doing amazing language tasks, translating almost any input into almost any output. So this diagram is about the game Pong. We've put the rules in place, then we press the button and we get a playable version of Pong. This ability to see and translate in any language is just unbelievable. You'll be able to find videos and examples of people using this for real-time translation. Again, if you've not tried it, please do have a go with a ChatGPT app that you can install on your mobile phones. When talking about technology, might use Gartner's hype cycle. We've got this trigger of innovation, and where do we think we are against this peak of inflated expectations? I don't even think we're close to the peak at the moment. Every day, there are new exciting capabilities or exciting products being released that are stitching together those underlying capabilities in different ways. And that's how we think about that ourselves. We think about those capabilities that are called out on the left there, from generating content, reading, summarizing, assessing, translating from almost any format to any format, and also the ability to see and generate. Those are the capabilities that this technology has unlocked. Our job as business leaders, your job as consultants, is to be thinking about how to take those capabilities and use them to solve business needs. And typically, this is about thinking about, back to that first diagram, understanding the opportunity. Think about what we're doing at the moment and how can we make that better. I talked about that example of sort of reviewing a document ahead of making it sort of submitted to a regulator. That's an example of what was possible today, but was really time consuming. Typically, you might proofread a document with one or two other colleagues. You might get a subject matter expert to review it. But it's hard to imagine reviewing a document from tens of different perspectives, especially not a day-to-day document. With these language models, we can start exploring and understanding and interpreting documents in so many different ways. We can say, how would this document be considered by a Swedish sales director? Where is it unclear when I'm going to send this to an Italian regional general manager? We can make so many improvements. And I think what we'll start seeing is that we're creating more documents with the intended audience being language models, which in turn, their intended audience being the humans that we're trying to reach. We know that when we're generating policies, we might have to write frequently asked questions to go against them. This is an exact example of where you might be able to use language models to say, here's a policy document. What are the FAQs? What would be your proposed answers to those FAQs? And then go further and see, did it generate answers that were right? If it did, it means your policy is clearly written. If it's wrong, maybe it suggests that there's some areas for clarity in the language of what that underlying document looked like. And to do all of this, we need to think about equipping people. Here at Blenheim Chalcot, we've got very, very clear incentives for our staff. Everyone's job will or should be changing as a result of this technological progress. And so we want to make sure we're equipping everyone with the skills. To do that, we incentivize people by making sure that half of their bonuses is attached to their investment in their own skills. This technology didn't exist in the hands of normal staff a year or two ago. If we expect people to be able to transform how they're doing their role, they're going to have time and opportunity to learn about it and to have internal experts, internal champions who are promoting and encouraging it. You don't need to be an amazing expert on this. All of us have seen this technology be created over the last 18 months. So all of us are on our own little learning journey. No matter where you are, there's something that you can be sharing with your colleagues, but also something else that you can be learning more and more about. We run internal boot camps. We think about what safety means, and we've created tools which are available to help reuse these capabilities. I've talked a lot about ChatGPT. The problem with that is that it's only really personally centered. It's great for helping yourself, but it's a bit harder when you're working as a team, where you might be saying, we've got 5 people doing a similar role. How can we make sure their jobs, their process, and their tasks are being done consistently? We've created a product called Quick Action AI, which is a great way to have reusable workflows, tools, prompts, best practices available for your teams so that they can each be doing their job, their individual processes and workflows more effectively. So just sort of heading towards a bit of a conclusion, and please do be putting questions in, and we'll come to those in the Q&A section in a few minutes. Wherever you are, it's a starting line. You should be going and getting started. There are many products that are freely available to use. If you've not started with ChatGPT, please do go there. We do need to think about regulation, but I do say that in many cases, there's been a lot of harm that's happened because of technology recently. A few examples we might be thinking about might be the Post Office Horizon scandal, the VW emissions gate, or the Boeing's issues with the 737. But in each of these cases, it wasn't really the technology that was at fault. It was the organizational culture, it was the management processes that led people to be misusing the technology. I don't believe there are enough significant AI risks for us all to be deeply worrying about them if we've got the right management process, the right culture around how we're using these tools and what sort of data we're processing on them. If you're anxious about getting started, then do consider when you're working on documents that are going to become in the public domain anyway. Those can always be improved. So do try out some of those examples of how to proofread a document. If you're trying to create something yourself and you're a bit stuck getting started, that sort of writer's block or blank page anxiety, do ask the tools, whichever tool you choose, to give you a few starting points, to outline a structure, to suggest what the best practice might be in this area. That's commodity information that you can then tailor and personalize with your own commercial context if you've decided that you're not comfortable releasing your data out to some of these suppliers. And I do want people to think about this as a spell checker. If you were having a team member who was refusing to use a spell checker right now, you'd probably be having some conversations, strong conversations, maybe even performance management questions, saying the spell checker is available, you should be using it. Many of us will remember when word processors were at the point where you had to remember to press spell check and it took a few seconds to run. We're now all acclimatized to sort of wiggly red underlines whenever we get a word slightly wrong. We should be thinking of these language models as the new version of spell checker. Everyone's job must be using these kinds of technologies. And if you're not, you're working in the ways of last year and the year before. So do try to get that into your mindset that everything we're doing can and must be changed. Otherwise, we are going to be disrupted. But because all of this is moving really rapidly, we do need to think methodically about it. We do need to think like an engineer, think like a scientist. We need to be forming some hypotheses. We need to be knowing what thing we are changing, how we are changing, and how to measure the output of it. So do think about your business processes. Do the 5 whys exercise to get to the heart of what the business process actually is. If the process is valuable, then imagine how would we start again if we're doing this now with AI? Form a mini hypothesis. What's the benefit you're looking to bring? Is it that you're trying to unlock something that's previously impossible? Is it that you're looking to do something with better quality? Is it looking to achieve something much faster? You need to understand what benefit you're hoping to bring at each point, and then apply it consistently, measure your progress, and assess whether it's working. These tools and technologies are going to keep changing, so there is no right answer at the moment. The wrong answer is to do nothing, and the other wrong answer is to do something and not measure and improve and iterate. The Kaizen or Six Sigma methodologies are going to be exactly what you need to be using to improve your processes and embed this technology. Identifying which process to think about, which product to think about, maybe a little 2x2 matrix to think about what's an internal thing, what's an external thing, what's a product, what's a process, might help you break down what's going in your organization to work out which areas you want to tackle first. And then, as I said, you do need to measure progress. To begin with, it might just be how many of our team have engaged with some of these tools. But trying to find some of those early wins, finding those things that are previously impossible, finding those things that are causing each person to have their own individual wow or aha moment is really, really important. It is sometimes very hard to quantify these changes, but we do know that those who are embracing this natively are going to disrupt those who are not. So it's important to be part of that journey, to disrupt yourselves rather than just being the victim later. And then to bring this to life with a few other examples here at Blenheim Chalcot. Accelerate People is an assessment organization. We're using AI to help train the next generation of assessors, not to do the assessment, but to help those assessors be ready. Broccoli, looking at customer communications at scale, working out where the best practices are, where there are agents who aren't performing quite so well or need some retraining. Quick Action AI, I mentioned, that reusable tool where you can each go create your workflows, save your prompts, and collaborate on those with your team. And one other sort of fintech example, Kudu is transforming how mortgage application journeys are working by assessing what in the process took so much time and what can be done with the AI to review and improve the documents submitted by a mortgage applicant earlier in the journey so that they don't get themselves tripped up and confused by paperwork during what's otherwise quite a stressful and a rare journey in an individual's life. So these are just a few of the examples of where AI has been embedded deeply, deeply in our products and processes here at Blenheim Chalcot. And with that, I say thank you, and we'll look forward to a few questions, which I think Matt's going to help me with.
Rob, firstly, thank you so much for the presentation. That was absolutely fascinating. As I mentioned earlier on, I've had the benefit of seeing you talk 3 times now on this theme, probably over the last 6 months, and I'm really struck by how each time I hear you speak, the world has moved on again, and it, for me, really underlines the pace of change that you've covered. I love the way that you're challenging people to think about their mindset and how they can look at things that hitherto have been impossible to achieve. I think getting into that mindset, challenging yourself to think, well, actually, with all that is happening, is there a way that I can take the impossible and now deliver it through these solutions? So, look, thank you so much. I thought that was incredible, and I can see there's been a lot of engagement in the live chat on both YouTube and LinkedIn. So, thank you to everybody that's participating. Towards the end of the presentation, Rob, you covered off some of the first question that I'll put your way, but it'd be interesting just to hear a little bit more, perhaps. But Catherine Misker is on the line today. Hi, Catherine. Good to hear from you. And Catherine was asking for just a little bit more in terms of examples around where you guys at Blenheim Chalcot are working with clients to encourage the use of AI. I just wondered if there's anything else that you wanted to elaborate on there.
Sure. I think one of the examples that one of our portfolio businesses, Agilysys, has been working on is in the public sector. We all know how squeezed finances are in the public sector. And one particular business process being done by a care organization is they hold public meetings, but then they have to issue formal minutes of those meetings. And it was typically taking 4 days to turn around those minutes. That's now down to 30 minutes.
That's incredible. In terms of just giving that access to the information so swiftly, that's fantastic. Excellent, good stuff. So, Catherine, I hope across what Rob's presented, the video, I thought the video is a great example of the power of the tools as well, and that example in the public sector. I hope that's helping to bring to life just how these tools are already being used. lots of questions starting to flow into the live chat now. Thank you, everybody, for touching on your points. I noticed that there's a number of questions emerging, Rob, around the sort of, I guess, the sort of information security aspects that could be involved around AI. Now, for everybody watching, we're going to be doing a session in a few weeks' time, which is dedicated to considering the risks around AI, and I'll mention that a little bit later on. But Rob, I know just from looking at some of the projects and the products that you're involved with, that this is not necessarily all about feeding information to models that will become publicly available. There are ways of ensuring that security is protected.
Absolutely. I think there's two fundamental aspects to think about. There's firstly, are you going to be having information leakage? When reviewing the terms and conditions of whichever model or supplying system you're using, you can understand whether it's going to be retained, how long it's going to be retained for, and what the purpose of it being retained is. There are many suppliers out there who are retaining the data only for a few days for their sort of operational security purposes, rather than from any model training purposes. So there are ways to safely use this technology. The quick action tool is one of those sort of wrappers that was enabled us to roll this out really rapidly by selecting some of those models that are working in that way. However, I do think the other side is really, really important. If you're using this as a knowledge model, you've got really high danger. These things are called language models. They should only be used for language tasks. If you're using them for knowledge tasks without supplying reference data or without a way of grounding them in the truth, they have got a really high risk of hallucinating. And I worry deeply that hallucinations are going to lead to harm. So do think about the other side of where the output of using these models is going to go, and how you're making sure that that's not going to be causing harm, or what you can do to reduce the likelihood of hallucinations. And again, there are technologies and approaches that can be done to solve that.
Excellent, thank you. We had a number of pre-submitted questions ahead of today, and one of those came from Tim, and I can see that B has also submitted a very similar question live via YouTube. Thank you, B. This was really around how do we sort of measure the return on investment for AI? I guess there's lots of ways to do that depending on the deployment, but perhaps you could share your thoughts on that with us, Rob.
I think I've alluded to a few of those during what I've said already, but the main thing is that we shouldn't be embarking on this as a big IT project that's going to take months and months and months and have an unclear ROI. I'm sure we've all witnessed IT projects like that. This instead should be something where you're spending an hour getting ready, trying something out, and then seeing whether it works, and then trying again and trying again. If we're iterative and we're putting in a very low investment into this, we are going to start seeing where that return comes for the different organizations, and different organizations are going to have different motivations. Some are going to be actually about reducing headcount, but most of the organizations I'm working with want to achieve more, and they're just constrained by resources. So using this as an amplification tool, using this as a go faster tool, is enabling them to achieve far, far more of what they always wanted to do, but couldn't necessarily afford to do. Mm-hmm. So with whatever it is you're doing, you need to understand what goals you're trying to achieve. It is possible. Typically, it's going to be indicatively in time saved or increased output for a given unit of time investment.
Fantastic. Just thinking about other questions that have come through. So Paul Nelson dropped a question through to us. Hi, Paul. Thanks for the question. And Paul mentions that actually, having reviewed the video earlier in his career, he was a maths teacher. And he just wonders, is there a moral question around socialization within education and being human about learning objectives? Interested to hear your thoughts on that one, Rob.
I've got young children and I worry deeply about education. I think probably when we look back at this point in 20 to 30 years, we'll see that this might have been the start of the end of the Victorian style of education, of classrooms and chalk and talk type teaching. But that doesn't mean we need to be existentially worried today. We just need to know that that's kind of inevitably going to be coming. I think today you can imagine there are going to be kids in classes, and forgive me for talking about children, but I think equally it's going to be applicable to people learning at whatever age and whatever stage in their career and their life they're at. But there are going to be learners who are struggling to apply theory. And as a teacher, you never have enough time to produce individual contextualized worksheets for every individual learner. But if you're teaching someone statistics and you're wanting to get them to do a bar chart, cross-referencing that with the individual individual passions and interests of a student. If you've got a student who loves X Factor and another one who loves skateboard tricks, why wouldn't you just generate that same mathematical learning outcome, but hyper-personalized to that individual student's interests? Surely that's going to result in more engagement and therefore better absorption and retention of knowledge.
Makes complete sense, and it brings us back to the sort of double sigma model that you showed earlier on, which really struck home with me. Fantastic, thank you. Lots of other questions coming through. Rob, one of the things that a number of people have sort of alluded to is how we as humans work alongside AI tools. I know with some of the things that you're working on at Blenheim Chalcot, you have this concept of human in the loop. Maybe you could give us a little bit more around that in terms of the importance of that with certain tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that each of us will have experienced a moment in our careers where we've delegated something to a more junior member of staff, and they've not quite done what we expect. And that's typically because they've not got enough context or they've not got enough experience in a particular place. We should be thinking of the AI in the same way, that these are our sort of junior interns, day one in the job. We've given them a little bit of instruction, but we do need to review what their output is to then course correct and improve and achieve something better. But at the same time, there's so many things that we each know are good practice, but we never quite have enough time for. We know that meetings run so much better if you've had an agenda, if you've managed to do some pre-read, and then in a timely fashion, you write up the summaries, the minutes, and the actions. So much of that operational efficiency could be done by having a junior person in your team, but frankly, very few organizations can justify affording to do that. That's where the AI already right now is really, really valuable. Getting automated summaries of meetings with actions coming up just greatly helps the focus and moving forwards on individual projects.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the session now, so any last questions, more than welcome. We've got time to squeeze one or two more in if you're quick off the mark and watching live. Rob, we had a pre-submitted question from Olu, which was really around how much assistance would somebody over the age of 50 need to understand AI. Now, I don't think this is about age from what you've explained today, but I guess just taking age out of the equation, I've certainly heard what you said in terms of, look, just start trying to use things like ChatGPT, those sort of prompts and starting to get to understand how to prompt a language model. What are your thoughts on that? Anything else that you wanted to elaborate on there? And prompting skills are, I guess, likely to be quite a sort of buzzword for a while to come.
Look, it's a great question and a great set of thoughts around it. I honestly think this is easier to use than the internet. And we all know how infuriating it is to actually search for something in Google. You might say, I want to go away on holiday to North Wales and I need 3 places that are dog friendly and can take a pushchair and blah, 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 blah. You put those questions in. Google does a terrible job. And they're not trying to bash Google. But we think back to what was impossible. That sort of search was impossible in the Google world. And we've all spent the last 20 years basically acclimatized to that not being possible. However, many people who are not so computer literate do get frustrated trying to use the internet, trying to use the web, because they're putting in questions like that and not getting good answers. You're getting 3 pages of adverts before you then get a generic list article. So if you've never used ChatGPT, just try to use it instead of a search engine. You might be really, really quite surprised that suddenly that question that I've just given was an amazing example. Gives amazing results. And then you start finessing it and saying, oh, but by the way, I just want it to be within 1 hour's drive of this kind of place and that. And you start adding in your additional criteria. And suddenly it's such a supportive thing. So what I would encourage people to do is to try to reduce any fear you've got and to try to force yourself to do this every day. Do a little bit every day. This is just the same as doing a couch to 5K style exercise routine. Day 1 is simply find the trainers and put them by the front door. If you've not installed the app on your phone, or if you've not created an account, do get started. And then just try a few questions each time. You'll quickly get better and better and feel more confident. And you'll already be way ahead of many of your peers.
Fantastic. And I think those relatable examples that we can try and sort of experiment with are so conducive to taking us forward, just in the way that you talked about, sort of reinforcing learning and that one-on-one experience. Look, I think we've got one last question that we can squeeze in, and Rob, you've covered quite a lot of this already in different ways, but Loretta asks a question about beyond content creation, what other AI tools are available for marketeers? I guess the list is becoming quite comprehensive.
That's a great question. I think what I'd encourage a marketeer to do is sort of flip the tools around and try to use it for content scrutiny rather than content creation. So you could say, maybe use it to create personas of people that you're not really reaching, and then how you can cross-check whether your material is resonating with that persona. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Imagine doing more of that market research, customer research, persona identification to make your marketing content land even better with your new ICPs.
Fantastic. Rob, thank you so much. We're going to end the Q&A there, guys. Again, Rob, thank you for what was an incredibly insightful presentation, a brilliant introduction to AI. I'm sure that everybody watching live would agree. I'd just like to emphasize to everybody that it is 3 webinars that we'll be doing over the coming weeks around AI. So beyond today's introduction, on the 11th of June, we'll be taking a deeper look at some of the risks around AI and how to assess those for your organization. And later in June, on the 26th, we'll be taking a deeper look at some of the ethical considerations around AI and deploying AI tools across businesses and enterprises. So I hope that you'll join us for both of those further sessions. I'm sure that they'll augment a brilliant introduction that we've had from Rob today. But once again, many thanks, Rob. I can see a lot of thank yous coming on the live comments with people showing their appreciation. We really appreciate your time today.
You're most welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.